Today on BenchBriefs, we're looking at a landmark decision from the Supreme Court of Canada in Democracy Watch vs. Canada, a 2026 case that dives deep into the balance between political transparency and freedom of expression. This case challenges how our laws regulate political donations and third party spending during elections, raising important questions about how democracy functions in Canada. So, what's this case all about? Democracy Watch is a nonprofit organization dedicated to holding governments accountable. They focus on transparency and ensuring Canadians know who's influencing politics behind the scenes. In this case, they took issue with certain federal laws that limit access to political donation records and restrict how much third party groups can spend during election campaigns. Democracy Watch argued these rules interfered with their ability to access information and to speak out on political matters, which they say infringes on their constitutional rights. Here's what happened. Democracy Watch requested disclosure of specific political donation records. They wanted to see who was funding political parties or candidates to better inform the public and encourage accountability. However, the government's legislation placed limits on what information could be shared, citing privacy and fairness in elections. On top of this, the law set spending caps on third-party political actors, groups like Democracy Watch, that aren't official parties or candidates but still want to participate in election debates and advocacy. Democracy Watch challenged these provisions, saying they unfairly restricted their ability to express their views and to gather and share important information with Canadians. The legal questions before the Supreme Court were twofold. First, did these provisions violate the Charter rights to freedom of expression and access to information? Freedom of expression is a cornerstone of Canadian democracy, protecting the right to speak freely about political issues. Access to information is crucial for transparency and informed voting. Second, if these rights were infringed, could the government justify those limits as reasonable and necessary under Section 1 of the Charter? Section 1 allows governments to place limits on rights if those limits are demonstrably justified in a free and democratic society. The court's analysis focused on weighing the government's interest in protecting privacy and maintaining fair elections against the public's interest in transparency and robust political debate. The spending limits on third parties were designed to prevent undue influence and level the playing field during campaigns. The disclosure rules aim to protect donor privacy while still promoting accountability. Why does this case matter? Democracy Watch vs. Canada highlights the ongoing tension between transparency and privacy, and between free expression and electoral fairness. On one hand, Canadians want to know who is funding political campaigns so they can judge potential influences and hold politicians accountable. On the other hand, there's a need to protect individuals' privacy and prevent wealthy actors from overwhelming public discourse with big spending. The Supreme Court's decision sets important boundaries for how far governments can go in regulating political finance without infringing on constitutional rights. It clarifies the balance between allowing citizens and advocacy groups to access information and speak freely, and the government's role in ensuring elections remain fair and not dominated by moneyed interests. This case will influence future legislation and debates about political funding, transparency, and democratic participation in Canada. Thanks for listening to this episode of BenchBriefs. Join us next time for another look at the cases shaping Canadian law and society.